What if Ronald Reagan was president during Vietnam? 1964 election. Reagan Goldwater vs. Johnson Humphrey. Despite that many people all heading toward Democrats because of the Kennedy assassination, Reagan remained popular enough to win Johnson's home state, Texas, his home state, California, and a lot of other states, like Vermont, Maine, Alaska, and D.C. Winning the election decisively, 369 electoral votes. In his first year, Reagan would lower taxes, and the Vietnam War would break out in about 1965 or 66. Reagan would send more troops to fight in Vietnam to fight the communist Viet Cong, and he did it very different than Johnson or Kennedy. In real life, some before that Kennedy died, he had wanted to bring the troops home, and Johnson sending more troops to Vietnam. Reagan technically did the opposite of Kennedy, and the same as Lyndon B. Johnson, sending more troops to Vietnam rather than bringing the troops back home. Ronald Reagan would also lower taxes and beef on military spending and making America great again. In 1968, Reagan would face George Romney and Richard Nixon in Spiro Agnew for the nomination, but Reagan would get re-nominated. 1968 U.S. election. Reagan Goldwater vs. Humphrey Muskie. Ronald Reagan wins re-election decisively with 365 electoral votes. Not that much to say about his second term. There was no Watergate scandal in 1971. Like in real life, the Watergate scandal causes Nixon to resign on August 19, 1974. But however, there would be no Watergate scandal. 1972 U.S. election. Goldwater Millward vs. Humphrey Muskie. Hubert Humphrey destroys Barry Goldwater with 467 electoral votes. Not as much as LBJ when he went against Goldwater for the presidency in 1994, but still a decent landslide. Again, there would be no Watergate scandal. Hubert Humphrey would withdraw all the troops from Vietnam. 1976 U.S. election. Humphrey Muskie versus Bush Door. Hubert Humphrey wins re-election in 1976. In 1980, the Democrats go with Edmund Muskie, the vice president of the Humphrey administration, but the Republicans go with John B. Anderson. Edmund Muskie promises to continue on Hubert Humphrey's legacy, but John B. Anderson votes on and supports communism. Who are you voting for? Hubert Humphrey's legacy or John B. Anderson's communism? Anyway, 1980 U.S. election. Anderson Bush vs. Humphrey Kennedy. John B. Anderson wins in 1980 with 288 electoral votes. In 1984, there are Jesse Jackson, Henry Jackson, Ted Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, who's not assassinated in this timeline, but drops out when Ted Kennedy enters the race. and Maxwell Frost. They easily go with Henry Jackson, and he picks Ted Kennedy. 1984 U.S. election, Jackson Kennedy vs. Anderson Bush. Julian Anderson's second term in 84 would be the explosion of federal government. As Anderson raised taxes, it created a big stock market crash in about mid-1987 or so. Democrats criticized Anderson for that. In 88, the Democrats go with Ted Kennedy, and Ted Kennedy would nominate Garrett Hart. Other Republicans would go with Bob Dole, and Bob Dole would go with Ross Perot. 1980 U.S. election, Kennedy Hart vs. Dole Perot. Bob Dole is too out of touch, allowing Kennedy to win states like Florida and Georgia and Arizona and Colorado, winning the election. In 92, the Republicans go with George H.W. Bush, the former vice president, to John Anderson, who at this time now was the former CIA director and representative from Texas. Ted Kennedy, however, ruins the economy in 91, and he promises that if re-elected, he would end it by lowering taxes and deeper military spending. 1992 U.S. election, Bush Quayle vs. Kennedy Hart. George H.W. Bush wins in a landslide with 467 electoral votes, but George H.W. Bush would raise his taxes. 1996 U.S. election, Gore Clinton vs. Bush Quayle. Al Gore wins the election in 1996 with 367 electoral votes. Al Gore would be able to lower taxes, and finally the Poison Guard War would come to an end after raging for nearly a decade. Al Gore would also be for military spending. And Al Gore would also end cronyism in Washington. 2000 U.S. election, Doug Kemp vs. Gore Clinton. Elizabeth Gore loses in a landslide to Al Gore, as Al Gore wins the election with 469 electoral votes over Elizabeth Gore. 9/11 still happens, but it goes worse than in real life. The 2004 tsunami still happens, taking the lives of 200,069 people. But other than that, despite the Iraq War still happened in 2003 before Osama bin Laden getting hunted down in 2004, Democrats are still popular. 2004 U.S. election, Clinton-Haley vs. McCain-Romney. Bill Clinton easily wins, coming off of a good Gore presidency. The 2008 recession would still happen, and the Iraq War would still rage on. But Bill Clinton would still be very popular. 2008 U.S. election, Clinton-Haley vs. McCain-Romney. Bill Clinton wins in a landslide with 387 electoral votes. But now many people are getting exhausted of Democrat leaderships and wants to move on. Nevertheless, it is still looking like the Democrats could pull off a victory in 2008 U.S. election. Biden and Obama versus Paul Romney. Rand Paul defeats Joe Biden in 2012. 2016 U.S. election, Paul Romney vs. Obama Clinton. Barack Obama wins 2012. The COVID-19 pandemic would still happen, but it would go very well. 2020 U.S. election. Obama Newsom vs. Paul Huckabee. Barack Obama defeats Ron Paul in a landslide in 2020. The Gaza War would still happen in 2023 with the Republicans winning the 2022 midterms, winning the House and Senate. 2024 U.S. election. Newsom Biden vs. Rubio Casey. Marco Rubio wins 2024. That brings us to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe.